Today, a Harris County grand jury indicted one Houston police officer, the second in this case, for murder, and 5 others for engaging in organized criminal activity as a result of an investigation stemming from a 2019 raid on Harding Street that killed 2 people in their home. The 6 officers indicted Monday follow 5 others who previously been indicted, including Gerald Goins, also indicted for murder. Additionally, other officers have been charged as well. This investigation was led by the Harris County District Attorney's Office after the HPD investigation was handed off to us in May of 2019. Dennis Tuttle, Regina Nicholas, and their dog were shot to death in their home during a raid executed by Squad 15 of the Houston Police Department Narcotics Division. The investigation determined first that Goins lied to a judge to obtain a no-knock warrant to raid the Tuttles' home on Harding Street, and that officers had been involved on that squad in a long-term scheme to steal overtime money from the city of Houston. The officers indicted Monday include Felipe, that's today, Felipe Gallegos, indicted for murder in the death of Dennis Tuttle. The charge is a first-degree felony and carries a penalty of up to life. Other officers indicted on first-degree felony charges today, who also face maximum sentences of life if convicted, are Oscar Pardo, engaging in organized criminal activity, to wit, aggregate theft by a public servant, and tampering with a governmental record, first-degree crimes. Sidell Lovings, engaging in organized criminal activity, to wit, aggregate theft by a public servant, as well as tampering with a governmental record. Both are first-degree crimes. Nadim Ashraf, engaging in organized criminal activity, to wit, aggregated theft by a public servant and tampering with a governmental record. And previously charged, and again today, Clemente Reyna, engaging in organized criminal activity, to wit, aggregate theft by a public servant and tampering with a governmental record. Also, Thomas Wood, one of the supervisors, engaging in organized criminal activity, to wit, aggregate theft by public servant and tampering with a governmental record, first-degree felonies. And then the following officers are charged with second-degree felonies, and if convicted, they would face 2 to 20. Frank Medina, for engaging in organized criminal activity, to wit, aggregate theft by a public servant and tampering with a governmental record, second-degree crimes. Griff Maxwell, engaging in organized criminal activity by aggregate theft from by a public servant and tampering with a governmental record, second-degree crimes. And one officer charged last year, also indicted today, Gerald Goins' former partner, Haji Armstrong, engaging in organized criminal activity, to wit, aggregate theft by a public servant and tampering with a governmental record. The consequences of corruption are that 2 innocent, ordinary people were killed in their homes. 4 police officers were shot, one of them paralyzed. And now all of them will face Harris County jurors who will decide their fate. I want to thank the members of the Harris County District Attorney's Office Civil Rights Division, especially our leader and the division chief, Natasha Sinclair, for a 2-year investigation, nearly to the day, of what we consider a game changer in terms of how narcotics policing and prosecution may be handled in the future, not just here but elsewhere. I can't speak for the police department, although I have spoken to the chief. But I can tell you that we're looking at the cases that we file, the way we file them, and how they're handled in a new light. And there'll be more to come on cases that are pending, on past convictions, and on possible exonerations. Questions?
Can I ask you a quick question regarding Dr. Hassan Gokal? He's the doctor who worked for Harris County Public Health. The judge today ruled that...
May I just stop you? I'm not prepared. I haven't read the judge's order yet, and so I can get back to you on that. But today I'm here to talk about the conclusion of this 2-year investigation.
So you're saying this is the conclusion?
Only to the shooting. Our work continues with regard to corruption and, of course, looking through the cases, past convictions, people who've been impacted. Our work continues.
What you just announced is a string of indictments from today. I just want to get total clarity. Was it 6 new officers today, along with potentially 2 that have been previously charged? How many total today, and how many of those were previously charged?
There were 6 that were indicted today, and there were 6 previously indicted, but I think that there's a crossover there. So let me just go through it instead of totaling them for you. Felipe Gallegos, Griff Maxwell, Sidel Lovings, Oscar Pardo, Nadim Ashraf, Frank Medina were all charged today. Previously charged were Officer Gerald Goins, now retired, Officer Stephen Bryant, now retired, Sergeant Clemente Reyna, Sergeant Thomas Wood, and Lieutenant Robert Gonzalez, and Officer Haji Armstrong. Those are all of the individuals currently under indictment, all members of Squad 15 except for Haji Armstrong.
So Sidel Lovings, is he the gentleman that also was paralyzed?
He's the police officer who was also paralyzed.
Can you speak to his involvement in organized crime if he was paralyzed in this botched raid?
I can't hear you, Mario.
Can you speak to his involvement if he ended up paralyzed? He was paralyzed. How was he involved in this?
Well, he was shot during the raid, but his involvement in the organized criminal activity is the overtime theft, and he's part of the raid team that killed Regina Nicholas, Dennis Tuttle, and their dog.
Felipe Gallegos is facing a murder charge. Can you go into more in depth there with regards to the shooting death of Dennis Tuttle?
I can't tell you or am not in position to reveal what the grand jury heard, but I can tell you they heard evidence that they believed he committed an intentional homicide against Dennis Tuttle.
So to be clear, one person was charged with intentional homicide of Dennis Tuttle in terms of someone who fired their weapon, but no one has been charged with firing their weapon intentional homicide of Regina Nicholas aside from...
Yes, they have. Goins is charged with 2 counts of felony murder, and the only real difference is the way the murders are committed. In other words, one is the result of activity that is so grossly deviant from the law that it results in somebody's death, felony murder, and that's foreseeable, whereas an intentional homicide like Gallegos is charged with shooting someone with a weapon is direct.
What do you say to the citizens of Harris County who hear this, right, about the culture inside HPD? Was it Justice Squad? I mean, because people are going to hear this and say, I mean, if this happened, I mean, does it go beyond Justice Squad, police officers?
I can tell you that the district attorney's office works on a case-by-case basis. We follow the law. We follow the evidence and we apply the law. And so we've prosecuted now and presented to a grand jury who's true billed these HPD officers, and that's all I'm really willing to discuss. I run the DA's office, the police chief runs the police department.
How incomplete was HPD's own investigation they turned over to you, considering now what you know and what you charged?
I think what's important is how complete our prosecutor's investigation was following receipt of the HPD information. And we have different jobs. We looked at a lot of things in this case with a broader scope. And so there was more to do. It took a very long time. Evidence takes time to gather. This isn't TV justice, especially when you're utilizing search warrants to get into people's phones, and then that information, after you've obtained it, to go to the next one, and then they have to be compared to offense reports, witness testimony, etc., to find and deduce the evidence, the final implications of the evidence. And that's what our prosecutors did.
If HPD had been more complete, would it have taken 2 years to do this?
Well, you know, again, I'm going to comment on our work. I'm really proud of our prosecutors. I can tell you how hard they worked. And I don't have anything to say disparaging about the investigation that was done. I think our job is to look at everything in an unbiased way, as long as it takes to determine if we've got the evidence that needs to be presented to a grand jury. Once to a grand jury, it's their decision. These are charges that were the result of a grand jury's decision. And in Harris County and in Texas law, grand juries are the ultimate independent citizens review board, if you will. They do have power of subpoena. And we, of course, as lawyers and participants in their activities, are prohibited from talking about them so that the citizens of our county can do the work they need to do to hold their government accountable and responsible when people die. And in this instance, Regina Nicholas, Dennis Tuttle, and their dog died as the result of gunfire from Squad 15 officers, specifically Felipe Gallegos to Dennis Tuttle. And it was the result of a raid that was part of their usual routine.
Kim, when this all began after the shooting, you said there were going to be 3 phases. So now the shooting probe is wrapped up?
Yes.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about what comes next, if at all, and what can you say about that?
Well,
There was to be more investigation into narcotics. What were 2 and 3? Phases 2 and 3.
the organized crime investigation was part of it. The overtime theft and the shooting was the third. But I will tell you, there are more phases than I initially said, because now we look at the pending cases, we look at the past convictions, and we analyze what needs to be done next. So more on that to come.
When in the last year you said your prosecutors had identified some 150 cases that you thought might need to be overturned. I think about 3 of those I'm aware of have been overturned or reversed or whatever. Do you have any information about additional cases like that that have, gone through the process or anything like that?
Not at this time, but I will tell you that it's possible and even probable. And with the addition of these officers and the new review that will be required of their cases, because of the questions now about their credibility based on this overtime theft and participation in this raid, I expect that this will continue. And I'm not sure how many phases at this point. I'm suggesting, though, that we'll go until we conclude, until each person who's been impacted by these officers has the chance to complain. We have the chance to investigate and see where the evidence takes us. And the highest courts have approved and agreed with us on the exonerations that have already arisen out of the Harding Street debacle.
And in regards to the charges that have already been filed with aggregate theft and tampering against the other 4, Thomas Wood, Clement Arena, there's been a great deal of pushback from the defense attorneys, basically arguing that you aren't turning over the offense report. Why is that? And then what is your response to their complaints?
It appears to be popular to accuse without basis our prosecutors of bad faith. I have full confidence that my civil rights lawyers, under the supervision of Natasha Sinclair, David Mitchum, Vivian King, that they are not hiding anything. We have a disagreement about work product. And because of that disagreement, we're seeking legal relief from a ruling that a visiting judge made instead of Judge Aguilar. And so we're not hiding anything. In fact, everything was presented to the grand jury. I think that's the point. Everything takes a long time, but that's the only way to get to the truth.
Quick question. I appreciate that you haven't had a chance to read Judge Bynum's statement on the pulling of Dr. Gopal's charge there, but I'm sure you've heard by now in the passing days that he argues those vaccines were going to expire, they wouldn't have gone to waste, so he gave them to qualifying people. Are you confident about the original charges?
You know, I'm not prepared to talk about it today, but I can tell you that our prosecutors do a good job. All the evidence will likely be presented to a grand jury, and probable cause may be determined by that grand jury. Judges do not have the exclusive authority. So we'll see. We'll take that kind of as it comes. Today's about Harding Street.
With regards to the intentional homicide charge against Felipe Gallegos, we charged Felipe Gallegos with intentional homicide of Dennis Tuttle. Did Dennis Tuttle ever get a shot off at officers?
The evidence that was presented to the grand jury is not at liberty to be disclosed. I just can't do it. As the case develops in court, all of this will come out, all the specifics about the evidence. But I can tell you it was all presented to the grand jury, regular people randomly selected in this county who came down during COVID to do their civic duty, and I just want to thank them for their courage and for their concentration in reviewing a complex, lengthy, and very troublesome set of facts and evidence.
I'm not talking about the specific case, but how many times in your professional career have you heard of an officer being charged with intentional murder, and yet the suspect who's charged with killing also fired back towards the officer or the opposite direction?
Well, you know, the various defenses to intentional homicide are available to any defendant, including police officers. And so I don't believe that you can compare any two cases because they're so different. Every single case is different. I'm sworn to do individual justice in every single case, and that's what we're going to do for the public. Thank you very much.
Have you had any other encounters with Judge Bynum in your office?
On the charge, I don't think you can go to look at the charges like the organized criminal activity. Is that related just to the raid and the aggregate theft charge, theft of public property? Is that the overtime?
Yeah, the organized crime scheme that they were indicted for is aggregate theft, overtime theft, making false entries into the offense reports and other records are the basis of the tampering with governmental document felonies.
That without including the organized criminal activity that's related to the theft?
Yes, the thefts are the underlying crime. It's doing it as a group that allows us to charge and the grand jury to listen to organized crime charges. It's the equivalent of the state RICO Act.
Do you know how long that scheme was going on? Was it like months or years? Or?
It's long running. And our statute of limitations bars prosecution past a certain time limit. That's what we're limited to. Additionally, our resources limit us, but I think there's plenty of work to be done here.
Did Chief Acevedo say anything to you when you called him about this? What did he say?
Well, it's professional courtesy, and he was going to take action.
Did he thank you for your investigation?
You know, we have I can't recall exactly what the words were, but it was, it's always a good conversation, even when it's unpleasant. We're professionals, all law enforcement in Harris County, regardless of any personal differences, while we are sometimes in positions to disagree, we're part of the same team. Thank you all very much. I've heard you, but I just can't answer any more on that right now, not till I've had a chance to look at it.